And the connection, I think, between the brain and the body is something that is pretty wild. How then suddenly our hormones are all out of whack because we have this stress level that is really spiked up, and the cortisol levels are really spiked up. And then, of course, you mentioned over exercising because, we must do our HIIT class and we must do this. And, even why are you doing a really stressful workout on your body in the morning when you have a really stressful day? Do that another day when you maybe have a less stressful day, but maybe do like a yoga session or something like that. It's just an interesting kind of concept. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I often get clients and people that I work with to zoom out. So let's say someone comes to me and they come to me with the issue of, I just feel crap, or their hormones are off, their menstrual cycles are off, and they have some of the symptoms that we've mentioned. And I always say to them, what are your stress levels like day to day? And I'm not saying that everything comes down to stress, but it's a huge part. So I'll say, how's your job? How's your stress? And a lot of the time people say, yeah, it's fine. I'm not too stressed. And then I say, okay, let's zoom out. So tell me how many boxes of these you tick. So, we'll talk about working, commuting to work, any deadlines, any
Mhm.
exercise. Do you meal prep? Do you cook in the morning? Do you look after pets? Do you look after kids? Do you have to make other decisions? Are you thinking about this? Are you scrolling on social media? And there's this huge tick list that I make them go through. And all of a sudden we sort of zoom out and they've ticked all these boxes, and there's loads and loads of boxes you could tick, as you can imagine. And, it makes people think, oh gosh, I really do wake up every morning with 1,000 decisions that I have to make. And then I come home after a long day of decision making and stress and work, and I sit on social media and continue to overstimulate the brain. And just like you said, humans didn't evolve in that way with constant stimulation all the time. To the extent that if I ask people, or I challenge people to do 10 minutes of deep breathing. I'm not saying become the Buddha and start meditation, but for some people it's like, oh, that's so boring. Just the thought of sitting for 10 minutes with nothing, and I'm guilty as well. I'm definitely not perfect, and I definitely go on my phone, but just the thought of sort of just sitting with yourself for 10 minutes, if that feels quite boring as a concept, then we probably are sort of overstimulated in our brain and chasing that dopamine.
Yeah, I know it exactly. If you take a little sojourn away from your phone for half a day, 2 days, you suddenly realize, whoa, okay, there's like a lot going on in my brain. Like I have some ideas, I have my creativity back and that sort of thing. And then when you go back on, depending how long you've taken off, say social media or your phone, it's actually really overwhelming the amount of information. You think, I actually feel really like frazzled, and you can see it because you adapt in a certain way. Your tolerance, I guess, maybe goes up, but it's just quite interesting. I like to challenge people. I do it myself as well. Like if I'm driving, can you just drive somewhere without listening to anything? Not
Yeah.
all the time, but it's just quite nice because your mind wanders and you're doing something. It's not like you're having to, sit and stare at a wall.
Yeah.
But it's just quite an interesting thing to try. And maybe people have strong opinions against it, but I actually quite like it personally. I think it just, yeah, lets your mind wander.
Yeah, I love that. And and don't get me wrong, not all clients are faced with these sort of high levels of stress, but the ones that do, usually these are the people that in their downtime, when they're getting their 15,000 steps a day in, which they've sort of pressured themselves to do, they're also then listening to a podcast, or listening or watching something, or they go back and watch Netflix, or like you said, they're driving and listening to music. And, I love, as you'll know, podcasts and everything like that. But sometimes if you're feeling overwhelmed and overstimulated, just get rid of some of the tech for a bit, even
Yeah.
just for 10 to 15 minutes, and just, yeah, be with your thoughts, or try to sort of reduce that stimulation.
Yeah, overconsumption is not really your answer when you're overstressed and
Yeah.
overstimulated. You don't want to be going something else over that is just a lot of information that is not really going in because it's just clogging you up really. So when we kind of go back to the original question of people feeling crap, what extent is genetics kind of playing in that? Is it a bit of a lottery, or are lifestyle factors just as important? Talk me through your thoughts on that.
So I think for many sort of modern day conditions that we see, diet and lifestyle and nutrition play a huge role, to the extent that there's a lot of conditions like type 2 diabetes, or like PCOS, where nutrition and lifestyle measures can actually alleviate the symptoms and even reduce or reverse the condition for example, bringing down the blood sugar or the insulin or whatever it is in question. Now, how I like to explain it um, to clients that have something like, if it's high cholesterol or high blood sugar or a hormonal condition, it's not necessarily that they have done something in their diet and lifestyle to cause it, but it might be that they had the genetic predisposition or the genetic switch. And for some people, that switch stays off. Some people don't have the switch at all. And for some people, diet and lifestyle and stress and other measures flick the switch on. So I like to tell people it's not something that they have done wrong. They haven't necessarily made the wrong choices with diet and nutrition, which has led to, let me just pick on type 2 diabetes. They could have had that genetic predisposition, but you put the two together and that's what can kind of trigger it and exacerbate the condition.